Good morning. Today's daf is Yevamot daf Pei Chet. We are at the beginning of the Gemara on daf Pei Zayin Amabet. Let me share my screen and we will get started. So yesterday we learned a Mishnah, the opening Mishnah of the 10th Perek of Yevamot, and we noted the unfortunate 16 consequences of a woman marrying husband number 2 after Beit Din approves her getting married again when a single witness testifies that husband number 1 died overseas. Unfortunately, it then turns out that husband number 1 is alive. And so as a result, she suffers 16 different consequences. Now, the Mishnah had not been explicit that we were talking about a single witness. So the Gemara is going to begin by clarifying this fact as we pick up again with the Gemara 12 lines up from the bottom of Pei Zayin Amabet. So, Midigatani Seifa. Now, in the end of our Mishnah, what did we learn? Nises shelo birshus muteres lachzor lo. That if, in fact, she marries without the court's permission, and it's clear that the permission that we're talking about is the Beis Din, without the court's permission, so that she's nonetheless able to go back to her first husband. Okay, shelo birshus Beis Din ela be'edim. What does it mean when it says that? It means that she's not able to go to that the reason that she's able to go back is because there were 2 witnesses. Miklal de Reisha Birshus Beis Din. So the implication of the fact that the end of our Mishnah is talking about where there are 2 witnesses but no court approval. So the implication is that therefore the beginning of our Mishnah is talking about a case where there's 1 witness, where there's court approval, uva eid echad, and 1 witness. Alma eid echad ne'eman. So we see from all of this that doesn't this show that a single witness is believed, and thereby we allow a woman to marry in that situation. So now the question is, what is the source for this? And we're going to go through 3 potential sources for why we would believe a single witness. The 4 potential sources. The first 3 we're going to reject, and then the 4th one will be the one that we will accept. So, utnan nami. So how do we know? And we know that this is the case because we have another Mishnah that says that this is in fact the case. Huchsugu liyot masian aid mipi aid. That when it comes to enabling a woman to marry, it was even a witness who got his knowledge from the mouth of another witness. The isha mipi isha, and even a woman from another woman. The isha mipi eved umipi shivcha, and even a woman learning of the death of the husband, even from the mouth of a slave or a maidservant. So alma eid echad memen. So we see that 1 witness is going to be believed. Utnan nami, we have another proof because we have another Mishnah that says eid echad omer achalta chelev v'hu omer lo achalti pater. So now we're going to try and show that that we have a biblical potential sources for this concept. So the first potential source is the fact that it says that we say that if a witness says that somebody ate chalev accidentally or without not doing it on intentionally, but then they need to offer a sin offering because the person ate chalev. He may have thought that it was actually shuman, which is kosher fat, and in fact it was chalev, which is prohibited fat. And so v'hu omar lo achalti. So we say patur, that person is exempt. So Taima de Amar lo achalti. Now, why is that person exempt from offering the sin offering? After all, we have one witness who says that he did it. So the reason is because he contradicted the witness. Ha ishtik. If he were in fact to be quiet, so mehemen, then we would believe the single witness. So Alma eid echad mehemen. Doesn't this show that we believe a single witness? And so, isn't that a good proof? And how do we know this? Titania, oh hoda elav chataso, because the Torah says if his sin, right? This is a pasuk in Vayikra. It's actually the quote could be from two different psukim in Vayikra, but in the end, in any event, the psukim say that when his sin, or if his sin becomes known to him, so then he needs to bring a sin offering. So what does that imply? V'lo sheyodiyu acherim, and not that others make him aware. So yachol af al pi she'eino machisho yehei patur. So I might have thought that even if he doesn't dispute the testimony, he should be exempt, meaning that that it's only when he himself knows it. Talmud Lomar, oh hodo elav, right? The point is that the verse says, or it becomes known to him, mikol makom. That suggests that it becomes known to him, however, meaning even if it's just one witness, as long as it's one witness, that would be sufficient. Well, Heichidami, what are the cases that we would say that one witness would be sufficient to cause a person to have to bring in a chatas offering when the one witness says that the person ate chalev? So ilema asutre velo kamach shlahu. Now, and I guess first of all, how do we know that it's even two? How do we know that it's even one witness? Maybe if you wanted to say that we were talking about two witnesses and that the person did not dispute them, kralamali. Why do you need a separate pasuk to tell us that? Everybody knows that two witnesses would make somebody liable for a chatas offering. Elalav chad. So it's got to be that we're talking about one witness. And that when the defendant doesn't dispute the case, so then that single witness is going to be believed, and he's going to be obligated to offer a sin offering. So Shema Mina Eid Echad Mehemen. So this is our proof. This is effort number one to try to prove that in fact the person who brings that a single witness is believed from the Torah. So now we're going to show that in fact that is not a valid proof. How do you know that in fact what's going on here is that the single witness is believed? Maybe the reason that the person has to offer the sin offering is not because there was a witness, but because the person in response to that witness didn't say anything. He doesn't deny it. And we say that being quiet is like agreement. So Teda, and know that in fact this is right, that Shtika Koda Damya, the Katani Seifa. Let's take a look at the end of that teaching. We cited the beginning of a Mishnah, Eid Echad Omer Achalta Chalev, V'hu Omer Lo Achalti Pater, right? When it comes to one witness, if the person says, that it's not true, I didn't eat, he is pater from a sin offering. And what did the rest of that Mishnah say? The Mishnah said, Amru Shnayim Achalta Chalev, if two witnesses say that you ate the chalev, v'hu amar lo achalti, and he says, I did not eat chalev, pater, he is exempt. However, Rabbi Meir mechayev. Rabbi Meir says you are chayev, meaning that two witnesses will trump your, a person saying that they didn't actually do the action. So Amar Rabbi Meir Kal v'chomer. Im heviu shnayim lidei misa chamura lo yaviu lidei korban hakal. Isn't it, if the two witnesses said that the person came and was actually killed somebody, we'll believe those two witnesses over the denial of the perpetrator. So certainly, and that's in the case of something severe like death. But when it comes to something light, relatively light, like having to offer a sin offering, lo yaviu ludei korban hakal, certainly we should require the perpetrator to offer the sin offering when you have two witnesses contradicting him. Amru lo, however, the Chachamim who said that in fact that offer the first opinion that said that even in that case the person is patur, right? What did they say back? Ma'im yirtza lomar mezid hayiti. Look, the guy has a great alternative statement that would exempt him from offering the korban chatas. If he were to respond, listen, I ate the chalev on purpose, well, then he's no longer obligated in a sin offering, because a sin offering is only for when somebody sins accidentally without the intention of sinning. So now we have the rabbis and Rabbi Meir disagree only in this latter case, when you have two witnesses and the person is disagreeing. But they agree in the first case that one is not liable to a chatas where the person is disputing. So that suggests that they also will not disagree, because there's not mentioned in the implicit case. What's the implicit case? That if in fact where one witness comes and says you did eat chalev, and the person doesn't say anything, well, then that person would have to offer a sacrifice. So Reisha, in the beginning, my time would come rabbanan. Why would the rabbis require the person to offer a sin offering when he does not dispute the one witness? So now, if you wanted to say that it's because we believe the one witness, but second, when you have two witnesses, even in that usually are going to be believed, so we say that they're believed, and yet the rabbis say that in that case he's exempt. So it can't be about the level of credibility. So elav mishum de ishtik. It's got to be not because of the credibility, but because the perpetrator himself is silent. Ushtika kahoda damya, and the being silent is like an admission. And Tosfos helps us. The beginning of Tosfos here helps us understand what does it mean. Shtika kahoda dami. I so often use that when when my kids don't deny something, I say, shtika kahoda damya. So what is that? How good a level of proof is it? So Tosfos says, second of the widest lines of Tosfos, Perish Kavan Deshasik Nira Lo Emes. That since he's quiet, it seems like it's the truth. V'yodea Kitsas Sheyesh Regalim B'davar, and he must know that there is some basis to what is being said about him. Aval Leka L'Meimar Hoda Mamish. But we should not say that this is actually a full admission. Sheyodea Vadai, that we know for sure what happened. Shekain who, that we know for certain that that's in fact what happened. Kavan Shehu shows it, just because he was quiet. So that's Tosfos' explanation. So just to give you a sense that it's not a true kihoda, it's not exactly equal to an admission, but it's similar to an admission. So that's answer number one, and we've rejected it because in fact it is not based on the believability of the one witness, but rather it's based on the silence of the perpetrator. So Elas Svarahi. So let's say that this is all just logical. Midi dahave achasicha safek shel chalev safe safek shel shuman. Let's say we have a piece of meat that we're unclear whether it's, or maybe it's a piece of fat, I guess, a piece of fat that we're not sure, is it chaylev, is it the prohibited fat, or is it shuman, is it the permitted fat? And a witness comes and tells you that I know for sure that this is in fact kosher fat. He is believed. Okay, so now that he's believed, so one second. So as a result, since we see that in this case he's believed, and Rashi notes that otherwise one could not eat anything prepared by anyone else, because you never know for sure that it's in fact kosher other than through the testimony of that person. And so as a result, that's why this is a very logical conclusion. However, midame is that case of this one piece of fat where we're uncertain whether it's chaylev or shuman, comparable to our case of a woman whose husband has gone away, and we need to know whether or not she's allowed to remarry. Hasam lo it chazak isura. The baseline in that case of the fat, there was no certainty about any prohibition. We were uncertain about the status of the piece of fat. But hacha it chazak isura de eshes ish. Here we begin with the knowledge that in fact the woman was married, and so as a result she is prohibited to marry someone else because she's married. And we have another rule that says that when it comes to illegal marital relations, we can't resolve the issue with fewer than 2 witnesses. So this is not a good proof. So in fact, if you want to make anything, if you want to make any kind of argument, what is this really like? Imagine that you thought that you had a piece of chaylev, and you knew it was chaylev. You thought for sure that this was chaylev. And now one witness comes and tells you, hey, I know that this is in fact a piece of kosher fat. In that case, we do not believe the single witness, because you know for a fact that it is chaylev, that it is the prohibited fat. So now we want to undermine this super challenge. So we've now tried to strengthen our objection, but this strengthening of the objection is not going to work, because midami, is that really comparable to our case of the woman? Hasam afilu asubo meya lo mehemni. When it comes to the piece of chaylev, where you know that in fact it's a piece of chaylev, well, in that case, even if 100 witnesses come and tell you that it's actually a piece of shuman that is kosher, you're not allowed to believe them, because you know that it's chaylev. Well, but hacha kaven dechi asu betrei mehemni. But in our case, when the woman has no basis to know, and so as a result, when the 2 witnesses come and say that in fact her husband has died, well, then we do believe them. So chad nami lahemnik, maybe we could even believe 1 witness. And so as a result, in the bottom line, we are not we don't have a good comparison. This is not a valid comparison. And so as a result, since the cases of a woman with a missing husband and a piece of fat are not really comparable, we need to find a new proof. And so that takes us to effort number 3. So, well, maybe we can say that this case is similar to the case of a single witness permitting tevel, hektish, and konamos. So let's go through how, just so that we understand how those 3 things can become permitted. Well, you can permit tevel through the taking of the trumas and maestros. So if you take the trumas and maestros, and so if you testify that trumas and maestros were taken from the tevel, that would be how you would know that it would be permitted. When it comes to something consecrated, if it's consecrated financially only, well, then you can redeem it. And when it's redeemed, the item that was consecrated is no longer consecrated. And similarly, when you have a konamos oath, that is an oath where somebody says that they have an object, let's say this pen, and they say that they are not going to get benefit from this pen. Now, if you were to say that, you can undo that oath by going to a chacham or a beis din and doing and undoing your oath, as we do in connection with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And indeed, you'll probably recognize that language of konamos from the Hataras Nedarim that we do. We even mention that kind of oath. So you could potentially undo the oath. So that's how those three things that are currently prohibited, because tevel, consecrated items, hektish, and konamos are things that are prohibited in their current form. But and so we say that there's a possibility of a single witness permitting these things. So let's say that just as a single witness has the ability to be believed with respect to those three things, so too a single witness is believed. And so that is our support for our conclusion that we will believe a single witness in this case. But the problem is that these cases are not in fact comparable. And so the Gemara asks, Hi Tevel Hechi Dami, what exactly is this case of Tevel? If you say that we're talking about the person's own Tevel, Mishum Dibiyadu Latakno. The reason that we'll believe him is because he has the power within his own ability to fix the produce. And so when he says that it's kosher, he's basically saying, I fixed it. So we believe the guy. Ela da'acher, but when it comes to somebody else, my kasavar, what's the analogy? So I kasavar Torah mishalo al shalchaveru. If you're going to say that he's separating truma from his own produce in order to benefit somebody else, enu tzarich das balim, and he does not require the owner's consent. Mishum debiyadu l'takno. Well, in that case, it's just like our first situation. He has the power within his own hands to fix the problem, and so that's why he's believed. It's not about believing the underlying fact, but because he has an additional ability, he has the ability to fix the issue, and so as a result, that's why we'll believe him. And if you say that we're following the opinion that says that in order to take trumas and maestros from somebody else's stuff, you need to have the owner's consent, and the person is claiming that he knows that the owner took the maestros and trumas and maestros, he gufa minalan. That's exactly our case. But how do we know that it's true? Maybe the statement with respect to believing a single witness, with respect to Tevel, Hektish, and Konamos, is only in the case where he has it within his power to fix the issue himself. And Hektish Nami, same issue with Hektish. Ikadushas damim mishum debiyadu lifduso. Right? If we're talking about something that is Hektish from money, well, then he has the ability to redeem it. Ikadushas a guf. And if we're talking about something that actually is set aside as a sacrifice, day, if it belongs to himself, mishum debiyadu lishtule, well, he has the power to ask a sage to annul the process of having made it hektish, and so it must be elada acher. So va'amar yadana bay the ish shil mariale, and I know that the owner, again, asked that the item be that the hektish category be rescinded. Well, he gufa minalan. Again, in that case, how do we know that witness is believed? Maybe the only situation where a single witness would be believed with respect to hektish is when that individual witness has the ability to fix the problem himself. And konamos nami, same issue with konamos. If you want to say that there's a problem of me'ila with respect to a konam, that if you say that you're not going to benefit from something, it's as if you're taking something that belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and as a result, there's a monetary sanctity that goes on the object. So again, he has the ability to redeem it. And if you say that no, it's just an outright prohibition and that there isn't some aspect of me'ila where you could fix it by redeeming it, and it's now a prohibition that effectively rides on the shoulders of the item itself. Odi day. So Edi day, if it's the witness's own object, mishum debiyado ishli shulei alei, well then again, he has the ability to ask a chacham to engage in hataras nedarim and undo the konam category. So el da'achar must be somebody else's. But amar ana yadana it shomar alei, and the witness is saying, I know that this guy went and asked for permission to be able to undo his konam vow. Well, he goofa minalan. That's exactly the problem. You're right that case might be comparable, but we don't know that in fact, when we say a single witness can undo a konam oath or can support the conclusion that a konam oath was undone, we don't know that it's specifically talking about a case where the witness himself lacks the ability to fix the problem. And so as a result, option number 3 has also been rejected, and now we come to option number 4. And Rabbi Zera is going to tell it to us. So Amar Rabbi Zera mitoch chomer shechmarta ala besofa, because of the severe consequences. We talked about this, we didn't go through them, but we talked about 16 consequences that our Mishnah has for this woman if it turns out that in fact her husband is still alive. Hakalta ala betchila. We're going to be lenient with her in the beginning, meaning we're going to allow her to remarry. Well, why do we have to be severe at the end and lenient in the beginning? Let's not be severe. Lo lichmir, velo lekil. Don't be severe and don't be lenient. Well, mishum iguna akilu bala rabbanan. No, because the rabbis want to prevent her from being an aguna, so they were lenient and they allow her to remarry based on a single witness's testimony. But they'll put in the back end consequences if in fact she does not. Now, Tosfos here has a fascinating understanding of this that the Re offers. So we go 4 lines up from the bottom of Tosfos, mitoch chomer shechmarta aleha besofa. So nira l'ri deleislan l'meimar anan sadi dedaika uminispa v'neman eid echad v'kach. That this is not saying that we know that she is going to investigate the situation and therefore the one witness is believed. And the reason that he might say that is because, in fact, we allow her to get married right away. There isn't any requirement for the woman to do any investigation, the b'kach min Torah, and that this is from the Torah. Ella mitakanas chachamim. This is all a rabbinic decree. Who denaman, that this person is going to be believed. The ain zeh akiras davar min Torah, and this doesn't undermine the Torah one bit. Kaven shedoma hadavar hagun lehamin, because we have a logic that this person should be believed. Kamosha efarish lekamam bepirkin, as we will explain later in this parak. Maybe we'll do that Tosfos tomorrow. Shebedavar sheyesh kitzas tam v'samach lo chashiv oker davar min Torah. That when you have a good logic for reaching a particular conclusion, that is not considered undermining the Torah. A fascinating thing. And of course, this is, in our community, Blue Greenberg is famous for her line that where there's a rabbinic will, there's a halachic way, and this, is a support for that attitude that we need to try and do whatever we can help agunot. So that's a worthwhile Tosfos for to have seen. So that gives us the conclusion. Again, in the end, we don't have any kind of source whatsoever for the believability of a single witness, and rather it's all based on our desire to enable a woman to remarry. And so even though the Bible never tells us that we should believe a single witness, we are going to believe the single witness to allow a woman to remarry. So Teitze Mizeh Mizeh. Now, our Mishnah said that the woman needs to leave both husband number one and husband number two. So we're going to teach a teaching of Rav. So Amar Rav, Lo Shanu Ela Shenises Be'ed Echad. That's talking about where she remarried based on a single witness. Aval Nisas Al Pi Shnei Eidim Lo Teitze. But if she remarried based on two witnesses, she doesn't need to leave. Now, the understanding initially is that it means she doesn't need to leave husband number two. Well, the people in Eretz Yisrael laughed at that. Asa Gavra V'koi. We've got the first husband standing right in front of us. And you say that she doesn't need to leave her second husband? So now we're going to offer one explanation of Rav, and later today we'll offer a second explanation of Rav. So lo tzricha de lo yad'inan lei. No, we're talking about where we don't recognize the man who's come back and says he's husband number one. And so as a result, that's why we're not going to force her to divorce husband number two. Well, idolo yadinan lei be'ed echad amai teitze. Well, even in the case of where she married based on one witness, if we don't actually recognize the guy as husband number one, why should she get divorced in that case? Let her stay married there. So, lo, sricha de asu beitrei va'amri anan havina b'hadei mikinafek ba'ad hashta. You have two witnesses who come and say that this man who says he's husband number one was with us since he left overseas, and we know for sure that he in fact is husband number one. And it's only you, the court and the wife and the people who remain in this town, that don't recognize him. And how do we know that in fact this kind of thing could happen? Because we have in the Sefer in our Torah in the story about Yosef, but Yakir Yosef as a chav ve'hein lo hakiruhu, right? Yosef recognized his brothers, and his brothers didn't recognize him. This shows that Yosef left his brothers when he was 17. He didn't have a full beard. And when he came back, and when they came back and they came to Egypt, he was having a full beard. And so as a result, why they didn't recognize him. All right, so that's our explanation. So again, we've now qualified Rav to say we're talking about a situation where there were two witnesses that say the man died. Now she marries, and then there are two witnesses that say the man who's come is the first husband. Well, so trayu training who. In the end of the day, we've got two witnesses saying that the husband died, and they are countered by two witnesses that say that in fact this is the first husband. So now let me just note what is it she should. So let me say this, explain the line, and then provide some background. So this should be a case where somebody who has marital relations with this woman is subject to an asham talui. An asham talui is a special sacrifice where you are unsure about the facts. You may have violated a sin offer and a prohibition, and as a result, you're obligated to offer a sin offering, but you're not 100% sure. And so, as a result, remarkably, the Torah requires such a person to offer a sacrifice immediately that is called an asham talui. And when eventually the facts become known, if it turns out that he was obligated to offer a sin offering, at that time he also has to offer a sin offering. And so this woman we're not sure. People are not sure. So how could anyone marry her and stay married to her? Every time they had marital relations, the man would be obligated to offer an asham toloi sacrifice. So Amar Rav Sheshes Kagon Shenisas le'echad me'edeha. So we'll say that the case involves where the woman married one of the two men who said that her first husband had died, and so as a result, that man is 100% sure that he is not violating any sin because he saw the man die, and so as a result, even though now we have the two men coming and saying that this guy is really husband number one, but the people in the town don't agree, and this man says it's definitely not husband number one because I saw husband number one die. So he gufa ba'asham tali kayama. Well, what about her? She also would have to offer an asham tali. So ba'omeres barili. Well, we're talking about where she also agrees with the or she's in a position where she says, I am sure that this man is not my first husband. I think that this is somebody else coming and being an imposter. Well, ihacha ma'ila memra. Well, in that case, what's the big chiddush about what Rav said? Because we're going to now go through and hear something that Rav Menachem says, and we'll find out that even Rav Menachem ben Rav Yossi it would all agree that in that situation, the woman that in a similar kind of situation, a woman could stay married. So what's the story? So I feel Rabbi Menachem ben Rabbi Yossi lo ka'amar ela kishabo edim. We're going to see exactly what he says, but he's going to talk about a situation where the contradictory witnesses come, meaning let's say the two witnesses say that a woman is divorced, and now two witnesses come and say that she was not divorced, where the second witnesses come, the achar kach nisis, and then she gets married. So we already have two witnesses saying she's divorced, two witnesses saying she's not divorced, and then she tries and she goes ahead and gets married. In that situation, that's where Rav Menachem says you have to, the woman has to get divorced. But in a situation where the first two witnesses come and say she was divorced, the second, and then she gets married, and then two witnesses come and say she was not divorced. Well, there, lo amar, we don't say that he, in fact, the second husband has to get divorced from the wife. To Tanya. So now, okay, I sort of told you the whole thing, but we haven't really seen Reb Menachem's statement inside. So now we're going to learn the Brisa with Reb Menachem's statement. Shnayim omrim meis. Two people say that a man died. Ushnayim omrim lo meis. And two people say that he didn't die. Shnayim omrim niskarsha. Two people say that the man divorced a woman. Shnayim omrim lo niskarsha. Two people say that no, she was not divorced. Harezo lo tinasei. This woman's not allowed to get married. The nisas lo teitze. But if she did get married, she's not obligated to divorce him. That is the Tanakama's position. Rabbi Menachem, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Menachem ben Yossi says, teitze. No, she does have to get divorced. And Omer Rabbi Menachem ben Rabbi Yossi, Amos ani Omer teitze. When do I say that she needs to get divorced? Bisman shebo edim ba'achar kafnis. Where the second set of witnesses that are contradicting the first set, they come before she gets married. Then she doesn't have to get divorced. So essentially, everybody agrees that if you have 2 versus 2, and the woman married before the second set of witnesses came, that she doesn't need to get divorced. So what's the big deal of Rava's statement? Everybody says that. Well, Kikama Rav Nami Bisman Shabo Edim Ba'achar Kach Nisis. Nah. So what Rav is telling us is that it's also true when the second set of witnesses came and then she got married. La'apukim and Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi, and he's basically saying that he disagrees with Rabbi Menachem, the son of Rabbi Yossi, and he agrees with the Tanakama in that brisa. V'ika Amri, or alternatively, we can say that it's not that he was saying that we believe that that it's where she came. The second set of witnesses came before, but rather time of Denisis, that in fact Reb Menachem is correct, that the reason is because she got married and then the witnesses came. But in fact, if the second set of witnesses were to come before she got married, she would have to go out. Come on, and that what Rav's point is that the halacha is like Rabbi Menachem, the son of Rabbi Yossi. But in any event, we've now explained Rav's statement that in fact he's talking about the not requiring the divorce of husband number two, and the situation is where we have two witnesses that say husband number one died, and now two witnesses come and say husband number one has come back, and we have husband number one in front of us, but the woman says it's not her husband, and she marries one of the witnesses that is certain that it's not the husband as well, because he saw husband number one die, and so as a result, that's a situation where we'll allow her to remain with the second husband. So
Rabbi,
go ahead.
Are you able to go back and explain why we believe the woman? It doesn't seem like she has any standing. She's not a witness. She's just believing one side against the other.
Well, no, she is testifying that she does not recognize and believe that this is her husband. And so as a result, it's just like with the piece of meat, right? If she's sure that this piece of meat is in fact shuman, she's allowed to eat it, even if lots of people say that it is chaylev, because she's sure of her situation. And so you're allowed to rely on yourself. The key issue is, when are we allowed to rely on someone else? Throughout this entire discussion, we have never said that a person is not believed for himself. For oneself, one is always believed. And so as a result, that's why we will allow her to say, this is not my husband. As a result, my marital relations with husband number two are completely legal, and I am not in any uncertainty situation. And so as a result, there is no requirement for me to offer an Asham Talui.
Then why do we make her get divorced in the first case?
Because in the first case, we're talking about where there was only one witness. And so as a result, the one witness that now is contradicted by two witnesses. So as a result, even though from her perspective, we might allow it, we can't allow it from the other person's perspective. So as a result, there's, it's not, that would be interesting if the one witness was married to her. But I think that even in that case, because we have two witnesses and two witnesses trump one witness, so we will end up believing the fact that the husband number one is alive, and so as a result, she will need to divorce him.
Even if she says this is not my husband.
Even if she says that this is not my husband. That's how I'm understanding this Gemara.
So it's not completely analogous to the case of Chaylev, because in the case of Chaylev, it seems that it doesn't matter what evidence there is against you, you're always believed.
Correct. Correct. That's exactly right. We noted that difference during the course, and the reason, and that was part of the point, that we don't say that it's a full analogy, and that's why we can't actually learn from Chaylev to the marriage situation. So you're absolutely right that the marriage situation is considered a different situation. Okay, so so Masiv Rava. So we're going to first challenge Rava. Rava is going to first challenge Rav's position, and then we're going to offer a second understanding of Rav. So Masiv Rava minayin she'im lo ratza dapno. That we have a brisa that says if a Kohen does not want to separate himself from a woman to whom he's prohibited to marry, dapno, we're going to bang him, we're going to strike him. Talmud Lomer v'kidashto. And the reason that we know that we need to do it is because you shall sanctify him. So that implies Baal Karcho, we're going to sanctify the Kohen even against his will, meaning that we'll beat him. Well, hey, Chidami, what kind of case are we talking about? So Elam Delon Nisus Le'echad Me'edeha. So we're going to now put this brisa in our framework, because what we're going to say is that what's the big deal if it's not a difficult case? Of course, a Beis Din is able to beat somebody into performing mitzvot and doing what they're required under the Torah. But so we're going to need to create this situation to say that it's got to be a complicated situation, and that's what we're trying to say is allowed to. We're still allowed to beat him. So, if you want to say that we're talking about a situation where the woman did not marry one of the witnesses, and she did not say, "I am certain that this man is not my husband," well, then no. So, would we need to tell us that we could beat the guy? Of course, we could beat the guy. If we weren't in a situation where the man that she was married to was certain that it's actually her, that her husband number one died, and if it weren't the case that the woman said that this husband number one who has now come is back is an imposter, of course we would be able to beat that guy. It must be that the case that we're talking about, that we're talking about where she married one of the witnesses, the Ka'amra Barili, and she says, "I am sure that that this is not my husband, and my husband died." The Katani Dafno, and yet we say that we beat the guy. So Alma Mabkinan Le Mina. So Mine. So doesn't this show? And so we're forcing the person to divorce. So even in this case that Rav said is not a case where we're going to force the divorce. So Rav explains, is there kahuna shiny? So Rav's going to give three potential answers. Answer number one is a Kohen is different. Yes, you're absolutely right. That in the case that I'm talking about, if the man is a Kohen, we're going to force him to divorce his wife because of the special strictures of a Kohen. So alternatively, I think your interpretation of that brisa is incorrect. When the brisa says dapno, that we beat him, it's not really that we beat him, ella my dapno be'edim, that we're going to go and try and undermine his position by finding other witnesses. So the point is we're going to try and prevent the marriage from ever happening in the first place, not that we will beat him and force them to divorce. Okay, and the Ibayasema, and answer number three. No, remember what we said, that one of the understandings of Rav is that we're talking about where the witnesses came after the second, after the woman marries husband number two, and that the Rabbi Menachem, Rabbi Yossi. And we're like Rabbi Nachum ben Rabbi Yossi. And the situation here is where the two witnesses came first, and only then did she marry. And so, and that brisa is like Rabbi Menachem ben Rabbi Yossi. And so, as a result, in that situation, that's where we're going to force him to divorce her, because the second set of witnesses came before they got married. And we said, like Rabbi Nachum ben Rabbi Yossi, that in fact, if they come first, well, then we'll force them to undo the marriage. Okay, so now we give Rav Ashi's second explanation to Rav's statement. And it's not about her not having to leave husband number two, but rather Rav Ashi Omer, Milo Teitze Dekama Rav, what was he meaning when he said that she doesn't need to leave? Lo Teitze Mehetero Harishon. No, she gets to go back to husband number one. That's the point. Ha'amrach Rav Chada Zimna. And in second, didn't Rav tell us this fact already? Ditnan Nisa Shalo Bershus Muteris Lachzerlo. That if a woman gets married without the court's permission, meaning that there are two witnesses that say the husband died, so she's allowed to go back to the first husband if he appears. And Rav Huna said in the name of Rav that that's the halacha. And so Rav Ashi is saying that what Rav is saying is basically this statement that she can go back to her first husband when he appears if she got married based on two witnesses. So chada miklala de chaverta itmar. And why do we need both statements? Yeah, we don't really need both statements, but one statement is learned through an inference, and so as a result, the other statement is an explicit ruling of Rav. So as a result, that's why we have the two statements. And you're absolutely right. They're not inconsistent. And that's the story. So now we've given two explanations for Rav. One is that, again, we're talking about the special situation where the woman denies it. She's married to one of the witnesses. And as a result, she's allowed to stay with husband number two. And the other situation is where, no, she recognizes husband number one, and she had two witnesses who say that the husband number one had died. And so as a result, we're going to allow her to really get back together with husband number one in the first place. Okay, so now we've dealt with all of that, so our Mishnah mentioned the ability to remarry based on the testimony of one witness, but she needs to leave both husbands if husband number one comes back. And now Shmuel is going to qualify it. So Amar Shmuel lo shanu ella shalom machashto. That again, the whole situation that we're talking about, where she needs to leave the second husband, is only about, and this goes to, I think, your question, James, where she does not dispute it. Aval machashto lo teitze. If in fact she disputes and says, in the situation where we now have the husband returning, that and she says, this is not my husband, even in that situation where there was one witness, she's allowed to stay with a second husband. So b'mayaskina, what case are we talking about? If we're going to say that we're talking about two witnesses that say that this man, husband number one, who came back, is in fact husband number one. What does it make a difference that she denies it? Because after all, there's two witnesses, and two witnesses beat one witness, even when that witness is supported by the wife's own eyes with respect to husband number one, saying that this is not her husband. But so therefore, it must be talking about one witness. And taimo de machashto. So we're talking about where husband number one comes back, and there's only one witness. And the reason that we're allowing her to stay with husband number two is because she disagrees with the conclusion, and now we have one witness against one witness, and the woman says, no, this is not my husband. Well, hashaska teitze. Well, that implies that if there was one witness coming back saying that this guy is in fact husband number one, that we would force her to leave. But v'ha'amar ula kol makom shehamina Torah eid echad. Anytime when the Torah believes a single witness, harei kan shnayim, we treat them as if there are two witnesses. And so since we're believing one witness with respect to the death of the death of husband number one, we should treat that first witness as if he is two. The aim dvarav shel echad b'makom shnayim. And now if one man comes back and says that this is in fact husband number one, we should not believe him because of Ula's statement that when we have one witness and we are told to believe him, as we said with respect to the woman whose husband goes away, that if we say that one witness comes and says that she's dead, we're going to believe her. So as a result, we should believe that one witness in the face of, because we're treating him like two witnesses, in the face of one witness who says that that this man who's back in front of us is in fact husband number one. So therefore, that can't be our story. So So here's what we're talking about. We're talking about where the initial witness who came and told us that husband number one died was not kosher. Rabbi Nechemia, and this is all like Rabbi Nechemia. Tanya, Rabbi Nechemia Omer, Kol Makom Shehemina Torah Eid Echad. Whenever the Torah agrees that a single witness is going to be believed, Halach Acharov Deos. We follow the majority, meaning if there's two sets of witnesses, we're going to follow the majority. And so as a result, two women, are testified against one man. So kishnei anashim be'ish echad, and we'll treat it like two men against one man. And so as a result, what we're talking about is the following situation: two women come and say that in fact the man, husband number one, died, and now only one man comes and says that husband number one is alive. So in that situation, we will believe the two women against the one man. The ibayasema kol hechid asa eid echad kasher mikara. So really we're talking about where the two witnesses who are testifying that husband number one is alive are actually disqualified from testifying generally, i.e. they're women, or e.g. they're women. So, and Shmuel agrees with Rabbi Nechemia, who says that when we believe one witness, we follow the majority of the opinion when two women testify against one man. Therefore, we're going to believe two women witnesses unless the wife contradicts them. So again, what's the situation? Imagine two witnesses come in the beginning and they're both women, and two witnesses come at the end and they're also both women. So two women say that husband number one died. Two women say, no, this man is husband number one. And now in that situation, that will be the situation where we will believe the woman and let her make the determining factor. And if the wife herself says this man, husband number one, is not in fact husband number one, he's an imposter, well, then we will believe him. The Ibayasema. Alternatively, we can understand a different way of understanding Shmuel's statement. Kol hechid asa echad kasher mikara afilu mea nashim ke'ed echad damyan. So whenever we say that one witness is allowed, we'll say that 100 women are treated like one witness. And so here's what we're talking about. We had women coming to say that there are that the woman that the first husband died. The Tarza the Rabbi Nechemia hachi. And so and now we have the teaching of Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Nechemia Omer kol makom she'emina Torah eid echad halach achar rov deos. Again, wherever we have a single witness believed, we're going to follow the majority of witnesses. For asu shtei nashim ki isha achat. And so we have a case of two women testifying against one woman. Kishnei anashim be'ish echad. And so that would be treated like two men testifying against one man. Aval shtei nashim be'ish echad. However, when you have two women testify against one man who's a valid witness, kafalgo dami. So that would be considered 50-50. So in this alternative answer, we're talking about one woman came to say that husband number one died, and two women came to say that husband number one is alive. So two women will beat one woman unless the wife contradicts them. And so as a result, in this view, two women do not beat one man, but rather are treated as equivalent. So again, under Ula's principle, the first set or individual would be believed because we give special credence to a single witness in avoiding an aguna. So the bottom line is that in addressing James's case, that it depends on exactly who the witnesses are, and depending on the nature of those witnesses, we'll either say that we're definitely going to believe the first witness that says that the husband number one died, or depending on the situation, we could believe the second set of witnesses and say that this in fact is husband number one who has come back. Or it could be that because of the way the witnesses, the first set of witnesses and the second set of witnesses fall out, we sort of treat them as equal, and we're stuck. And in that situation, we'll follow what the woman herself says and allow her to determine the situation. And if she says this husband number two is not in fact my husband, well, then we will allow her to remain married. If this man, husband number one, is not in fact my husband, well, then we'll allow her to remain married to husband number two. Now, tomorrow, our Mishnah said that a woman must get divorced from both husbands. But there's a good question that one could ask, because why should she need a divorce from husband number two? A woman's not allowed to marry two men. So if a woman marries man number one and he's standing right there, and then a woman accepts a marriage from husband number two, that second relationship is nothing. There's no divorce required. And so if you want to understand why a divorce is required, even from husband number two, well, then you got to stay tuned for the answer tomorrow.
Thank you all.
Rabbi, quick question. Since it only
Please.
says 2 women equal 1 man, would 3 women then trump 1 man? Or
No. They basically, under that principle, as many women, it noted a few lines earlier, that even 100 women would be just treated like one witness as 1 man. And so as a result, that they would be considered 50-50 and essentially equivalent. But again, they would be considered equivalent, and whoever was the witness to help to say husband number one died would be believed. So you could go with the 100, or you could go with the 1, whoever was the one who was testifying with respect to the first case. And it's only in the case of 2 women against 1 woman that the woman herself will come in and rescue herself and say, we're not going to believe the second 2 women who say that this is in fact husband number 1, when the wife herself says that this is not husband number 1.
guys, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Have
Shabbos
a wonderful
Gesundheit.
day, wonderful Shabbos. Look forward to continuing our learning together.
Thank you. Good Shabbos all.
Bye-bye.